Now let's get to President Obama's nominee for Defense Secretary, former Republican Senator from Nebraska, Chuck Hagel. When Hagel's name was still being floated for the top job at the Pentagon, we heard immediately questions about his qualifications, and primarily on two issues, really more comments. One he made about a gay nominee for an ambassadorship and about his stance when it came to Israel. But those points are beginning to fade as reports are indicating one of the big challenges he has, at least on the Republican side, Democrats have different problems with it, but on the Republican side, have been that Hagel is his abandonment of the neoconservative foreign policy. Neocons believe that American force can force change in global, regional, and national leadership, and making Iraq a democracy, for example, will lead to changes in other spots in the Middle East, like Iran or Syria. But Hagel, a Vietnam vet and a decorated one, he went from initially supporting the war in Iraq to opposing the surge in 2007 and later supporting Obama's presidential campaign, which may, in ways small or large, explain why Obama's opponent in 2008 and another neocon Republicans now oppose their former friend and colleague.
What is his view of America's role in the world? Whether he really believes that the surge was the worst blunder since the Vietnam War. That clearly is not, that's not correct. I mean, that's in fact, it's bizarre.
Mark, we'll get into the comment of the Jewish lobby. We'll talk about also what he said about the ambassador to Luxembourg in a second. But a lot of people say down deep, it's about the Vulcans, the neocons that had such a prominent role in both Bush administrations and also had a role as it relates to foreign policy teams for both McCain and then for Romney. And the stance that Hagel took, which was more on the diplomacy side, and you can't fight every battle, and also that he's on record as saying that you can cut the Defense Department, or that would be part of what. How much of that do you think is really driving the fight as much as it is about what he may have said?
I think it colors it. I'm not sure how important that is. Clearly, his vote against the Iraq War has an impact.
The surge.
Yeah. But he came against the Iraq War, and that was where, quote unquote, the neocons really aligned. And then his opposing the surge. I'm sure all of that comes together, but I don't think it has any material impact. I think ultimately it's going to come down to his positions and asking, why weren't you for the surge?
Why is that relevant to his service as Secretary of Defense? Let's assume he has bad ideas on those things. Why does that render him unqualified to serve?
Well, because it is about good ideas and good policy and the good implementation of policy. So if you view that his policies, forget about, did he upset some neocons or whatever
but wouldn't
faction.
he be implementing the president's foreign policy and the president's
Well, that's
plans?
The interesting thing in my view is why did the president pick such a lightning rod who is clearly opposing the presidential view as to Israel and our coalition with
Let me
Israel.
ask about that. He mentioned the Jewish lobby, and apparently there's going to be a lot of people coming out on both sides saying, look at his actual record. He certainly hasn't been. Is that as offensive a term, or was it just a loose comment that he should have more artfully said?
It's offensive.
Definitely offensive.
It's big offensive. But you know what? If that's all they have on him, he apologized. He knows it's offensive. And all of us have said things we wish we hadn't said.
Last thing, do you think he'd be the first decorated veteran that would be a defense secretary here? Significant or not?
I think it's significant. We should be proud of his service, and I think it does bring something to the table, but not everything. But I think absolutely.
Okay. We're going to wrap things up after this. Please stay with us.